This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dub them ease.
And we are back for another edition of The Onside Kick right here on Most Valuable Podcast, your one-stop shop for all the greatest NFL news and analysis. We got a jam-packed show, Mark. I know you're a happy camper.
That's right.
Bears today announcing their head coach, Matt Nagy. We're going to talk about that. Is he the right guy for the job in Chicago? Gonna also talk about the team that he left in the Kansas City Chiefs and should they fire Andy Reid. And then we're going to dive into some NFL draft, looking at the New York Giants, their number 2 pick, before we preview the divisional round games for this week. But before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning. Number 1, if you haven't already, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That is how you help support the channel. And at the $10 tier, you can be on the podcast like Christian has been, like Patrick has been, like Jake has been, like Matthew will be. So you can join the podcast, talk about whatever topic you would like. Also, check out mostvaluablepodcast.com. We have a new website, new look, new website because of our wonderful patrons at patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Also, selling MVP t-shirts. That information is down below in the description. Make sure to check it out, how you can get your own MVP gear. And last but not least, if you're on iTunes right now, if you have an iTunes account, please go and give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating on iTunes. It would mean the world to us, and then do the rest for the Most Valuable Podcasts. That's kind of redundant, but that's what it sounds like. But we're going to talk about the Chicago Bears first. And Mark, you're a happy camper. Matt Nagy had his press conference today. And before we get into the whole thing of, is he the right hire for the Bears, what's your general reaction as the resident Bear fan here on the podcast?
I think going through it, when it first happened, I was surprised it happened so quickly. And then I was also thinking, I like it. Was he the first guy that I was going to jump out at? Maybe not. But going and doing some of this research and looking at him, trying to answer my own questions I had, everything I saw, I liked more and more and more. And now with this press conference, you got to put something out there of these press conferences are essentially pointless.
You get the fans hyped up, though.
Yeah, it's essentially just a, hi, nice to meet you. My name's Matt. We're going to have some fun together over the next few years. Hopefully, we're going to win some games.
Hopefully, the next few years, not like 2 and then you're done.
Yeah, hopefully, you don't even get shutted. Just
God.
with 1 year.
Or Vance Joseph. He almost got that fate.
Well, he didn't get shutted.
He almost did.
He didn't get almost Vance Joseph. And, these are kind of pointless. I mean, you don't really say anything. He doesn't have a staff put together, although I'm sure he's got something in his head. He talks about how he doesn't have, hasn't had a full opportunity to really, really look over the roster, even though I'm sure he has. It's essentially just one of these, you're not really saying anything, but you're just saying a few things to get people excited. But with that being said, he said things that got me excited. I mean, I really like his personality. It's very infectious. You can't listen to him talk without getting excited yourself. You can just hear
he's
the
an
excitement.
Optimistic guy.
Yeah, he's optimistic. He's excited. You can tell that he is a Ryan Pace kind of guy. If you put Ryan Pace in a room and you put Matt Nagy in the room, you were going to be the most excited person in the world because these are the two most optimistic and positive thinking kind of men in football right now. And I think that's kind of cool. I mean, he's very different than Trestman, than John Fox, than Lovie Smith, than Dick Duran. Very different than what Chicago has had in the past 2 decades. So it's going to be interesting, and I can get into some other things first as well. But as much as I'm excited to read comments of what Chicago Bears fans watching this video think about him, just from the press conference and stuff like that. As a not Bears fan, it's kind of cool that you even yourself was like, I like this guy.
I do, and here's the thing that I don't mean to say this as like shitting all over your parade and Bears fans' parades, is Number one, I liked it. And I'm listening to him talk, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm not a Bear fan, but he's getting me excited. And, like, I'm optimistic for what we're going to see from the Bears with Mitch Trubisky. But I'm sitting there, and I'm watching this press conference during my lunch, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, after a while, I'm looking at him, and I'm going, I've felt this way before. When have I felt this feeling before? I'm eerily having deja vu right now. And then it hit me. I'm like, Ricky, you're a fan of the Illinois Fighting Illini. Their basketball team a while ago hired John Gross, who very similar, I would say, to a Nagy hire right now, because Nagy, the big thing, and we're going to get into it, the big weakness that he has, we were talking about inexperience with DiFilippo last week. Nagy's the same way. Like, he's only been an offensive coordinator for 2 seasons. He's before that been a coaching intern, coaching assistant, where he kind of talked about today. With the coaching assistant, he was on both sides of the ball. Then the offensive quality content coach, where he basically was just on the offensive side, being the assistant for the offensive coordinator. And I'm sitting there going, holy shit, it's kind of similar, where you've seen John Gross, where he's been with Taylor in the NAIA, then he was with NC State, then Butler, but then he followed Thad Matta, basically, hey, we're going to Xavier, all right, we're going to Ohio State. And I'm sitting there going, Andy Reid, Thad Matta, 2 coaches to where it's like, are they top 5 coaches? No. But are they good coaches? Yeah, they're pretty good coaches. And then in experience. Then I'm thinking like, oh, remember those press conferences that you'd be like, I would sit there and go, yeah, I like John Gross, but could we win some Big Ten Conference games? That would be nice. I get that Nagy hasn't coached a game, but that is the bottom line. Of course, that's what it's going to come down to.
You got to win games.
Right now, it's, hey, I like the guy. He's a good guy. He gives me hope. But my only worry, if there is one, is that going to translate to us winning games? Because I want whatever's going to translate to us winning games.
That's how
I feel. That's what I feel as a Bear fan.
And he even hinted at it a little bit. And I don't remember if this was his press conference or an interview he had with one of the radio stations here in Chicago.
Because he did his rounds.
Yeah, he did. He did a lot of rounds. But he was saying something of, you can have a coach that is of a teaching mentality. You can have a coach that is I'm going to yell in your face mentality. And it doesn't matter because everybody's styles work for something. And then that's kind of what it is. I mean, you're just kind of doing whatever it takes to win. That's what matters. And he hasn't coached a game yet for the Chicago Bears. And his team has not even really been assembled yet, because there's a lot of guys who contracts are over. A lot of new people going to be coming in. He comes from a West Coast style Andy Reid tree, but at the same time, he is potentially going to be a little bit more spread based, because that's really the things that he would introduce in those, I think it was 5 games for the Chiefs that he was play calling for. A lot of run pass options, things like that. But we haven't seen any of that. Who knows what's going to happen? He might be 4-3. He might be 3-4. He might say, screw it, nickel all the time.
Well, he even talked about that in the press conference. He said that everyone's going to talk about 3-4 or 4-3. And he's like, basically, we're in an NFL where there's sometimes where teams stay in the nickel the entire time.
Yep.
And it's like a confusing kind of front. So he goes, maybe we're just going to mix things in and out. And sometimes we're nickel, sometimes we're 3-4,
and
sometimes we're 4-3.
It really is going to come down to, we just got to see it. And this first year, because people are going to get excited. We're Chicago Bears fans. We've seen it in the videos, every comment.
I've already heard the Sean McVay comparisons.
Yeah, we see it in every comment section we have. The Bears fans get excited, and I totally get it. I definitely do. They're probably going to be 16-0 next year. But let's temper it for a moment. Before we get to an 18-1 perfect season, we need to think about the fact that this is a guy who needs to get some of that experience. He's got play calling experience now. He's got offensive coordinator experience. He's a quarterback kind of guy. He can work with a quarterback. But he said it in this press conference of the fact that, when talking about the Kansas City game where he was play calling in the second half, a lot of people are saying, no, Andy Reid took it back over, which would have been weird for Andy Reid to be like, hey, you got us here, but now I'm taking it. Would have been a weird thing to have happen. And he took ownership of it and said it's a learning experience. And I think that's what this next year is going to be. And a lot of Chicago fans are going to be a little disappointed with that because this is Mitch's second year. And it'll be hopefully the first time he has a full NFL season. It's the coach's first year. Who knows what the offensive coordinator could be? It could be, for example, it could be, the quarterback's coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe he brings him with. Who knows what direction. Vic Fangio might be there. He might not be there. A lot of changes, a lot of growing pains.
At least
just got to see what happens.
At least Bear fans can look and say, thank God Dow Loggins ain't going to be there.
That's right.
Basically, thank God that he's going to be in Miami with
Got rid of
Adam
him.
Gase. But the biggest worry that I had when they announced the hire of Nagy, what was it, yesterday? They announced it, but then today they were doing the interviews and actually naming him head coach. My initial thought, and I know that in our text group, Sean was trying to say that, well, he wasn't an offensive coordinator in Philly, so my point didn't suffice, whereas today during the press conference, he kind of proved my point where even though he was an offensive quality control coach, he still was in the quarterback room and was learning and kind of interacting with these quarterbacks. My concern when they named him was, all right, I know last year he worked with Mahomes. I know last year he was working with some of these quarterbacks to draft one of them for the Kansas City Chiefs. However, when it comes to working with starting quarterbacks, the main three that he's had to work with is Donovan McNabb when he was already an established vet, Michael Vick when he was already an established vet. That was actually post-prison Michael Vick.
Well, yeah, Philadelphia.
Yeah, that hide your beagle, Vixen Eagle. And then Alex Smith. So that was my initial worry of he's never had a quarterback as the starter, or his team has never had one. That's a young one because young quarterbacks are going to go through learning pains. However, today at the press conference, kind of tempered those worries of how he talked about Mitch. And not just talked about Mitch, talked about how, well, when we interviewed him for the 15 minutes at the Combine, he was like, you know what? I wasn't really that hot on him. I thought he was like a temper. He's like...
That's not quite what he said.
He was like... He
thought Mitch was introverted and scripted. Which he said about 90% of the quarterbacks.
All of them are scripted. Plus, he said in those 15 minutes, you don't get a good read for most of them. But then when he had him for like 4 or 6 hours, he was like, this kid gets it. This kid knows it.
But he also said about Mahomes that working with Mahomes this year opened his eyes of saying, I'm talking about things that this guy doesn't understand yet. I'm using terminology that he doesn't know and things like that. And I think that's an important thing. And he seems to be a couple things. One, he seems to be very much of the I'm a teaching kind of coach. Two, he also said it himself that he's a leader of men, which I like that. I think that'll be good. It's a very inspirational, motivational thing. That's something that John Fox actually was good at. As much as we all criticize John Fox for a variety of things, he was good at motivating the team.
He said the most important word, too. The most important word that starts with a C. Culture.
Oh, I hate that.
He said building.
I think it's so dumb.
Because when he said that, the first thing I think of was...
Bill Belichick, I know.
That's one of them. But more importantly, I looked at, and maybe it's because recently I watched the SI little video they had of Sean McVay when he was in his early days of the Rams. Basically, Sean McVay had to come in and be like, this is how we're going to approach each day, each hour, each minute, and this is going to be our kind of pyramid of excellence and get that. That's what Nagy's going to have to do in Chicago. I mean, you might say, I hate that word, but basically, let's change culture and go work ethic.
I don't. To me, all culture as a coach means is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, do what I say or get the fuck out. That's all culture means. I mean, that's Bill Belichick says it all the time. You know, having this culture of do your job.
Mm-hmm.
Do your job means do what Bill Belichick says or get the fuck out of here, and he does it every year. Gets rid of guys. You know, I give zero care or anything to the culture thing for the NFL, because to me it's a word that people put stock in that doesn't really mean very much. But with that being said, I think that really Nagy doesn't have to do that much. John Fox already did that work for him. John Fox, if you're going to talk about culture, John Fox already instilled a culture of motivating players. Players wanted to play in Chicago. At no point in this horrible season where they somehow managed to be a 5-win team did any of these players actually give up on the team.
Which could have been a 6-win season if Garoppolo didn't play. You could have beat the 49ers if Garoppolo didn't play.
We could have won every single game that Mike Glennon played if Mike Glennon didn't play.
The thing that I kind of, and maybe this is because I used to be an educator, I relate it so closely to like what I would, the same kind of tactics.
Coaching and teaching are basically the same thing.
What I would kind of use with like when I was in the band side of it is you're coming into a job that's like, you know what, the guy before me did it this way, but it's like, okay, he laid down this foundation. Now I'm going to, like, Nagy's got to come in and just tweak it.
Well, he's going to come in here and,
he's gonna put
have it be done the way he wants it to be done.
He's going to put his fingerprints all over it. And for me, the big thing is what are they, because he was kind of talking about the roster a little bit. And two of the big things that I think will benefit him is Mitch, I think, will grow with Nagy as the head coach. You know who else I think is going to be phenomenal under Nagy? Tariq Cohen. Like when he was talking about running backs who can run and being a pass catcher in the backfield, I was like, you know what? Jordan Howard's not bad. But I feel like Tariq Cohen is going to benefit greatly with having Nagy's style, Nagy's offense behind that, in that offense. My only question was when he was talking about the wide receivers, and I know that Inman came over and he was a kind of decent addition for you guys.
Yeah, he was fine.
That was the thing that I need. Like Brandon brought it up before he left, before we recorded tonight, was the big thing that the Chiefs had is they've got Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Besides those two guys, their wide receivers are diddly poo. So it's like with the Bears, I feel like that's what you need to do. You need to get one or two guys that you can be like, okay, these are our rocks.
Sure.
And have Mitch, okay, these are your go-to targets.
I mean, that's pretty much what any team wants to do is have 2-3 good receiving options. But at the same time, we still don't 100% know really what Nagy's going to do with the offense. Is it going to be a West Coast offense? Is it going to be a spread offense?
What do you think? What do you think he'll do?
I think it's going to be a little bit. I think it'll reference West Coast, but I think it's going to be a little more spread.
Okay.
And I definitely think that he's going to want to take advantage of Mitch Trubisky's ability to run the ball. You know, I mean, we saw it a little bit from Dow Loggins and John Fox of the using a run pass option. Or the designed runs, not even just the bootleg. I mean, the bootleg too, but actual option plays for Mitch to make that decision and design quarterback runs as well. And I think we'll see more of that. But at the same time, I think what we're hopefully going to see is Jordan Howard being Kareem Hunt. Because they're both top running backs in the NFL. Top young running backs in the NFL. Tariq Cohen, I definitely could see some things coming out of him, but I really am nervous about Tariq Cohen just kind of being a flash in the pan. We see it from speedsters, those like young, quick motion type of guys, those joystick players. We see it every now and then of, wow, they're really awesome, and then 2-3 years later, we don't even remember their names. And I hope that's not the case because I really like him in the offense and I like what he can do, but who knows?
If there's one thing that Nagy can take from Andy Reid, and we're going to get to Andy Reid in a little bit, but if there's one thing he can take from Andy Reid that'll be so beneficial to the Bears, it's what he talked about during the press conference today of how Andy Reid is a great motivator. And it got me thinking like, holy shit, just can't think of Kansas City alone. You have the Kareem Hunt story, which before their game I was watching pregame, and in the interview he said, like, yeah, on my first NFL carry, because John Gruden's like, you fumbled. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't even remember the last time I fumbled. But he's like, Andy Reid came up to me and he was like, you got this. We're coming back. Like, be ready. We're coming to you next offensive possession again. And just having that motivation.
Trust.
Think about a guy like Tyreek Hill, where coming out of college, one of the big things that I know everyone was talking about was, shouldn't be in the NFL, the whole beating his girlfriend thing. Andy Reid having trust in Tyreek Hill, I would assume helped him have the confidence to do what he did. And most importantly, Alex Smith. Alex Smith coming over from San Francisco, where it's like, great. I just got beat out by Colin Kaepernick. Everyone's calling me a bust. I don't think that really got to him, but really it was one of those things where Alex Smith was in a position where wait it out. He can go either way of I'm going to tank or I'm going to do well. And having a coach like Andy Reid to be like, no, you got this. I believe in you. Yeah. I believe helped him play up to what he could be. And Nagy's got to have that.
A few of the things that he talked about was communication, honesty, and trust. And
with communication, the lack of or failure of communication at times.
Yeah, and he really kind of put a lot out there. And I think what we're going to see is that trust. And he specifically mentioned trust when talking about a quarterback's relationship with his coach. And he also put it out there, because we talked about Mitch quite a bit, of it's not just about the quarterback.
It's about the coach.
And he even said, this was in a radio interview when they asked him on 670.
The Score?
Yeah, Bernstein and Goff.
Okay.
On their show they asked. I believe it was their show. I don't know. It's been a long day. But they asked him, do you think you're going to win with Mitch, or do you think you're going to win because of Mitch? And his answer was, we're going to win with Mitch. You know, it's not just one player, and especially not just a young player. You can't put all that on him. He's got development to still go through and everything, and it's a team game. But he really emphasizes the trust aspect, and I think that's what we're going to get a lot of. 100%, I believe this is going to be a player's type of coach. I think him coming and being a player is going to help that. I think his history of not going to he went to a D1 school, but not going to, your FBS kind of school, having to go to a lesser.
You're talking about Nagy going to Delaware.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to harp on, in case there's any Delaware fans out there.
I mean, Joe Flacco went there.
Yeah, he did.
Go Blue Hens.
In case there's any Delaware fans out there, I'm not making fun of your school. I'm just saying it's not, it's not top choice necessarily for a young high schooler.
No.
Not getting to really play in the NFL, having to go to the Arena Football League, and then being a real estate agent. This is the story of a guy who understands expectations not quite going where you would hope, or not quite meeting your expectations. This is a guy who understands that sometimes you got to fight a little bit harder. I think those type of background characteristics are really going to make him motivate players to go forward, to play harder, to fight through adversity, especially because Chicago gets injured all the time. Hopefully that's something that gets fixed. But when you have that next man up mentality, you got to teach these guys and get it in their heads of, and in their blood really, of you just keep fighting, you just keep working harder. And these things, you can get through them and you can still win and you can still succeed.
Before we end the segment, I'm going to do a little. In my mind, there are two pro athletes that I know went to Delaware. Do you know who I'm thinking of?
Well, Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco's one of them. The other one used to play in Chicago in the WNBA.
Oh, well, I don't.
Elena Delle Donne.
Okay.
Elena Delle Donne went to Delaware. The only two people in pro sports that I know went to Delaware.
Once again, in case there are any WNBA fans out there, I'm not making fun of your league. I've just never heard of her. Because I don't. But she's a good player, right?
Let's be completely honest. The only reason I know of her was she was drafted highly by the Chicago Sky.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's a good player, I'm guessing.
She's no longer she got traded from us and is now with the Washington Mystics.
So maybe she wasn't that good?
No, she's good.
Okay.
We screwed that up.
But, it was a mistake.
Yeah, no. I think it was a contract issue. Basically, it was, you're going to leave us, so we're going to trade you. kind of a thing. I believe it is. WNBA fans, let me know. But yeah, they're the only two people I know from Delaware. But this is where you guys come in. Bear fans, let us know what you guys think of the hire of Matt Nagy. I almost said Mike Nagy. Matt Nagy, what do you think? And is it the right hire for the Bears? Let us know in the comment section.